This game was an absolute blowout, and it's about time we put the pedal to the metal for an entire 48 minutes and just absolutely destroy a team, because we destroyed the Philadelphia 76ers. And I know they didn't have Joel Embiid, but still, they had two all-star level players. They had Ben Simmons, they had Jimmy Butler, and we just, it boggled my mind. We absolutely crushed them. I don't even know where to start. I mean, we got up by 43, 44 points. I guess the main reason for that is Philadelphia couldn't score the ball, and the main reason for that was Jimmy Butler was getting locked up by Evan Turner, which I wouldn't have started Evan Turner, I would have started Jake Layman. So props to Terry Stotts for starting Evan Turner, who did an absolutely tremendous job on Jimmy Butler. Now, in my opinion, Evan Turner has a type of player that he does really well at guarding. I think Evan Turner is really good at guarding the skilled 6'8", 6'9" small forward that doesn't have elite quickness. So a guy like Jimmy Butler or Chris Middleton or Paul George. For some reason, Evan Turner always does a really good job against players like that. If it's a small forward that has better quickness than those guys, Evan Turner's getting blown by. If it's a small forward that's a little bigger than those guys like Giannis, then he's just shooting over the top of Evan Turner every possession. But players like Jimmy Butler, Evan Turner seems to do a pretty good job at defending, and that was definitely the case against the Philadelphia 76ers. I believe Butler had 5 points and was 1 for 8 shooting from the field. Ben Simmons also can't shoot outside of 3 feet. This is a guy who, in my opinion, shoots with his offhand. Now, I've watched a lot of tape on Ben Simmons. He shoots a lot of his layups right-handed, even if it's a scenario where he should shoot it with his left. But if you notice on his free throw, he shoots the ball left-handed. He's been reported as being ambidextrous. I think he is close to being that, but he's slightly more right-hand dominant. And I honestly think if he did what Tristan Thompson did a couple of seasons ago and switched what hand he was shooting free throws with, it would benefit him. And that dude, when his teammates aren't hitting shots, he's not effective at all. We sagged off him, we made him drive the paint, and he struggled with that. He was driving at guys like Yusuf Nurkic and Myers Leonard, who were just parked underneath the rim because he could only shoot layups. He doesn't really have any touch outside of 3 to 5 feet. And then when he'd kick out the ball, none of their shooters were hitting anything, so it made Ben Simmons pretty ineffective. They have JJ Redick as an elite shooter, but he struggled. And then other than that, they don't have Markelle Fultz, he's hurt. So they don't have any good scorers left outside the players that I've listed. They had a lot of defensive players, Amir Johnson, Wilson Chandler. They had a shooter in Landry Shamet who didn't really do anything, but he'd been playing good for them lately. That team was just absolutely terrible. They looked like we did on Christmas night against the Utah Jazz. But also props to the style of basketball that we played. We played with a great defensive energy, and we also played with great ball and player movement. Although Philadelphia played bad, and this is what it looks like when we combine defensive energy with ball and player movement. That second quarter was possibly the best played quarter of this entire season, just because of how well we moved the ball. Our cuts were crisp, precise, and they made sense. It also helps when guys hit shots, which is what they were doing. That is always the icing on the cake that brings the whole thing together. But even if we were missing shots, just the way we were moving the ball and the way we were playing offense, I still would have said we played a very good style of basketball. That's the thing. Sometimes you can play a bad style of basketball and still make a lot of shots and make it look better than it is. And sometimes you can play a really good style of basketball and you miss shots, so you don't really score that much and it looks worse than it is. In this quarter, we played a great style and we were hitting everything. The biggest performer was CJ McCollum breaking out of his slump, and that was a game after Klay Thompson broke out of his slump against CJ. CJ said, "Tonight it's my turn," and he made a couple form improvements that I noticed early on in this game. In previous games when he was missing shots, he didn't really have smooth extension with his shooting arm. Hopefully these clips kind of illustrate that, and then compare him with how he was shooting against the Philadelphia 76ers, where he was just getting straight extension. He was getting a little bit better arc, so a lot of shots that were going in and out now had a better chance at falling through the rim. And I'd noticed that he'd been shooting flat in previous games, and I think he finally made the adjustment. Now, he always talks about locking out his wrist, but I don't think that was necessarily the issue. I think it was just smooth, one motion extension of his shooting arm. Now, in my opinion, a lot of straightforward forward forearm movement is a lot easier to do from mid-range because you're closer to the rim, so you can shoot more of a line drive shot. It's easier to get some touch on some mid-range shots shooting that way than it is from 3. I noticed a lot of CJ's 3s were missing short or off to the left or right because it seemed like he was straining just to get the ball to the rim from 3-point land, and that's because I feel like he had a lot of straightforward forearm movement and not enough arc underneath the ball to get it to travel to the rim from 3. So that's why, in my opinion, he was struggling from 3, but he was hitting pretty much all his mid-range shots. But now hopefully he's able to apply this fix consistently to his shot the rest of the season, and he's able to start hitting 3s as well as continue to hit mid-range jump shots, because as I said, all he needs to do is start hitting 3s to be a helpful player. I know he has deficiencies in pretty much every other area of the game, but if he can just hit mid-range shots and layups like he's been doing so far this season at an elite efficient clip, and he can start knocking down 3s like he's done before, then it would be his most efficient season by far. What was nice about this blowout is Dame and Nurkic struggled. They didn't really do much. It was everybody else that was producing and showing up that was able to build this lead for us. In previous games, it was Dame and Nurkic against the Warriors. They didn't really have a whole lot of help. CJ was struggling. The role players weren't necessarily playing well. So it was Dame and Nurk trying to carry the team, and it was nice to get a blowout where it was the opposite case, where Dame and Nurk didn't really have to expend too much energy. They didn't have to do too much, and the team took care of them for once. Now looking ahead to the Sacramento Kings matchup tonight, we got a battle of two very good backcourts. The Sacramento Kings have De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield. De'Aaron Fox is kind of your do-it-all point guard. He gets rebounds. He's a really good passer. He gets around 8 assists a game, I believe. He's scoring almost 20 points per game. He's a scorer. Now the biggest question with De'Aaron Fox coming into the league was his jump shot, but he's been shooting around a 40% clip from 3 so far this season, so he looks like he's developed his shot enough to be a lethal threat from the outside, and he loves playing in transition. He has some of the best straight ahead speed in the NBA. He reminds me of a slightly smaller version of John Wall when he gets going downhill, and this is a guy, he has some vertical, so he'll dunk on you. He's also a very good and energetic defender, so this is going to be a very challenging matchup for Dame, one of the most challenging matchups in the league. That's just because it's hard to match De'Aaron Fox's energy, especially when you have to carry the load on the other end of the floor. De'Aaron Fox might be my favorite non-Blazer, never was a Blazer in the entire NBA. This dude has a YouTube channel. I'll link it down in the description below as well. He's a guy who I'm subscribed to and seems like a really down-to-earth, humble kid, and his YouTube channel is actually pretty interesting to watch. Buddy Hield, on the other hand, is your smooth shooter. He's a guy who's a lethal 3-point threat, and he can do a little bit off the dribble, but that's not really his game. He just likes to launch 3s. He can hit from the mid-range, and he can finish at a decent clip around the rim, so he's not limited to just being a 3-point specialist, but we're definitely going to have to try and keep him off the 3-point line. Of course, Buddy Hield might just simply miss shots. He's been in a slump the past 3 games. He hasn't been shooting well, so that might continue, and we might be fine even letting him get off wide open 3s, but you don't want to play with fire. You definitely need to try and contain him. Nemanja Bjelica is a stretch 4 they also have, who's shooting 45% from 3 so far this season. He's a lethal threat, and he's a guy that you can't leave open as well. Al-Farouq Aminu should be able to do a pretty good job on him because Bjelica isn't really that much of a threat to go off the dribble, and he's not quick enough to get by Al-Farouq Aminu, so Al-Farouq Aminu should be able to contain him on the perimeter. But you also might see Al-Farouq Aminu on De'Aaron Fox because I believe they start Bogdanovic at the small forward spot, and he's 6'6", so you might see Dame guarding Hield, you might see CJ guarding Bogdanovic because they're not that undersized compared to those matchups, and that might allow Harkless or Aminu to switch over onto De'Aaron Fox. I think that'd probably be the best offensive matchup in my opinion. That allowed them to switch the pick and pops between Bjelica and De'Aaron Fox so that Bjelica doesn't get going from 3. And then of course you got Willie Cauley-Stein, who's an energetic, athletic big man who's a solid defender, and he's developed his offensive game this year, and he's now one of the better two-way centers in the entire NBA. That's going to be a challenge for Nurkic, but Cauley-Stein isn't too strong, so I think Nurkic might have a chance at bullying him in the low post, and that's definitely a matchup that I look at early and often to try and get Nurkic going. Running the offense through Nurkic recently has paid dividends, so that's definitely something I continue to look to do against the Sacramento Kings. So anyway, this is all I got for now, True Blazer fans. I hope you have a great 2019, and I hope you had a great New Year's. Peace out. Go Blazers.